What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another hype versus reality for you. And what that's going to be about today is this guy. That's right, folks. This is the Microtech Socom Elite. This is the manual version, even though that sound and that action would make you think different. Yeah, this is a manual. And yes, it is a beast. This is a big knife. So, first things first, I just want to say, those of you guys that don't know my hype versus reality, I'll be going over the size specs, some size comparisons. Then we'll be going into the hype, what you hear, what you see, whether it be from the knife community or from the manufacturer, from the distributor. We all get a bunch of hype. Sometimes it's hype that we create, ourselves, because we like certain aspects of the knife. Other times it's hype that's created by manufacturer or distributor to try and get you to buy it. So there's a lot of stuff. And then, of course, the hype from reviewers and videos we see that makes us think that we're going to expect something that maybe we don't get, when we get it out of box. So I'll be going over that hype, and then I'll be going over the reality and what I actually got from the knife. And then another preface here will be this giant hickey looking thing on my hand that is pretty hideous. Those of you guys that know probably know what that is. That is a burn. And it was created by my kettle that I use for heating up my water for my coffee. The steam that comes out of the top of that is extremely hot, and it torched me. It hadn't got me in a while, and it came back with a vengeance. So I'm an idiot. Needless to say, I'm going to go ahead and get into this, guys. And first things first, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys go ahead and put the specs on the page right here. I don't like to waste your guys' time and spew off a bunch of numbers, so I'll just go ahead and throw that up. Then I'll bring you back, and we'll go ahead and do some size comparisons. First things first, I'll go ahead and do the PM2, since that's a knife that a lot of you guys out there have. And then I'll bring in the Benchmade Super Freak. Same size as the 560 Freak regular version. So a lot of you guys have these, and they're relatively similar size, but much smaller than the Microtech. I wouldn't say much smaller, but significantly smaller. Looking at about just under an inch difference, maybe like 7/8, 3/4 of an inch difference there on overall size. And then I'll go ahead and bring in a few more Spydercos for good measure. Got the Shaman. That's my customized Shaman here with my regrind, nub delete, and dyeing of the scales. And then a better size comparison here would be the Millie. This is the Spyderco Military. And you can see that this is relatively similar, even bigger than the Microtech here. I didn't mention that this is in M390 steel, this Microtech Socom Elite. I know some of them come in I think 204P and a few other different types of steel. Next on it will be, I'll go ahead and bring in the Shirogorov F95NL, because that's a very similar size knife. A little bit smaller still. And then the Hinder XM18. Much smaller knife. This is more in comparison to your PM2s and Freak and Shaman, stuff like that. Definitely more in that size range. So moving right along, I'm going to go ahead and go into the hype. And we're going to talk about that. For those of you guys that don't know, this is about right around a $300 knife. Retail. I don't know if that's the retail price, but that's what you're going to get. That's the going rate out there. And that's, I think, a great price for this knife. That's, of course, subjective. So I know some guys might think aluminum scales, and it should be less, or I don't know what why people think that this is overpriced, or why you would think it was overpriced, but I don't think that at all. And what we're looking at here is an aluminum scale, like I said, aluminum scale on both sides here, and we have a titanium liner lock that is connected here by these screws in this pocket. That is a very thick, beefy liner lock, guys. Yes, probably the thickness of some scales that are frame locks. So don't think that's going to have an issue as far as strength is concerned. But yeah, this is the hype on this knife. A lot of the hype, whether it be positive or negative, is surrounding the fact that this is technically a tactical knife. So a lot of people in the military are like kind of drawn to these knives. They're very popular in the military, all the different sects of the military. They're nice and pointy, and they've got the thumb ramp, and they are very stabby looking, I will say. And they have this tactical grip, this tactile grip, also tactical in a sense for grip when you're stabbing or slicing or whatever. And it is one thing that could be negative or positive hype is the fact that this is tip down carry only. For a lot of people, that is a negative thing. It was something that I had to consider in the purchase, and you guys would all have to consider. This also has pin stop pins. The thumb studs are not thumb stubs; they're actually stop pins, and that is gonna that's supposed to give you more stability as far as the blade's concerned. These things are known to be extremely tough and be great for dirty tasks because it has a very tight tolerance and kind of like bearing pockets. So supposedly keeps the pivot very nice and clean. They are also known to have an incredible action and just be really tough, durable, all-around beater type of knife. Also very good for EDC. They are very large, so that could be a positive or a negative hype. Again, very tactical. They have like the glass breaker on the end and stuff like that. One thing I'll say is I hear a lot of people talk about how big they are and how it's a pocket hog a little bit and stuff like that. I've heard some negative hype on that. I've heard some things about it having a really thin behind the edge dimension for how thick the tip is and stuff like that. So that's some more hype. Just overall, this thing's got like a lot of tactical hype. A lot of people talking about how great of a like fighting type of knife it is and stuff like that, and just a beater all around knife. So I hear a lot of that. And then moving forward into the reality when I actually got it, some of that hype was created by also the people I know and respect, like Super Still Steve and Elliot from Sharp Thinking, and there's just a lot of guys I know, Alchemy One, guys that use Microtech that are really impressed. One of the things Steve said to me that made me like really want to get one was he said the tolerances were amazing, the way it's put together, the fit and finish, executing the tolerances and design, he said I was going to be blown away. And when he says something like that, I know that I need to get one because it was Steve that initially got me the 25 that said I had to check it out. And he's never been wrong when he said I needed to check something out and that I would appreciate the tolerances and the design of the knife. So, again, I've said this before in the past. Sometimes it's the people we respect, the people that we watch their videos, whether they're our friends or just, other reviewers. They understand your intention. They understand what you like. They like the same things. You start to find these people that you like, that know you. So, anyways, in saying that, the reality, once I got this thing out of box, guys, I was extremely impressed. I am a guy who really appreciates fit and finish, and tolerances and design. I love when someone does things right and does their due diligence to figure out how to make a better product. And these guys did. Everything about this knife seems to work in relation to the way the knife is designed, and that's what I really appreciate about this knife. The way it is made, the aluminum scales that get crap from people all the time. If it's this kind of money, it should be titanium and blah, blah, blah. Guys, if this knife was titanium, you're talking at least an ounce more, if not more, okay? So the fact that this knife is this big and keeps its weight down is due to the fact that it's aluminum scales. So those guys that want to bitch and moan about that is one thing you got to be ready for. If this is titanium, you're talking at least an ounce more, if not an ounce and a half, could be even more. So that's something to think about. And then, of course, this blade, the fact that this blade is 4 inches long, it's going to get everything you need to get done. It is an excellent work utility knife shape. The way it's ground, so you can see it keeps a lot of meat up to the tip there. You got a lot of thickness right here. You can see that I have laid this back to 15 degrees, so you can see the tip does get broader, and they do that by design. They wanted the tip to be much thicker. I thinned it out because I'm not going to be prying necessarily with this knife, and if I did need to pry, I would make sure that I could get it up into the thicker section of the blade before I would try to pry anything. I wouldn't be using the very tip of my tip to try and pry something. So that's when they made this, they made it with military personnel in mind, and military personnel a lot of times aren't thinking twice about the way they're going to use their knife. They just stick it in and go for it, and if it breaks, it breaks. That's just the way, they got to get shit done, and they're just going to do it. So less thought of like, ooh, I might break my tip and stuff like that. So that's partially why they make it the way they do, and I appreciate that. I don't mind the fact that the bevel is going to, broaden as I go out to the tip. That's fine with me. I want a slicier tip that's more refined, so that's the route I go. I could always change my angle and try and keep it more of a consistent, bevel, but I really don't care. This is a user, and it doesn't bother me at all that it broadens at the tip. And in saying that, I really appreciate the design of this blade. I love that it has this flat into a nice broad belly and nice refined tip, and keeps a very good amount of steel out here. It also is a fairly high grind and allows for, fairly thin behind the edge dimension for how thick this stock is. It's really nicely ground. It is like a saber ground, flat ground. This is not a hollow, as you can see by the reflection. This is a stone wash. And getting this thing out of the box, first things first, looking at the fit and finish, it was just amazingly done, guys. The fit, you guys can see how tight the tolerances are here. The fit is done amazingly. Where these two meet up, it's not like, they chamfer everything well so that where it meets up, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to notice the little differences there because of that chamfering. But if you look, you can see that for the most part, the jimps all line up. Everything's done very cleanly. The hardware is perfectly sunk. Even though this is a tapering handle, so this hardware does have to change length, you know what I mean? But they still make sure that it's perfectly sunk and countersunk here. The pivot's perfectly countersunk as well. A little bit sticking up there, but Nothing that's going to bother you. And where it could interact with the pocket clip, it's perfectly sunk. These screws for the liner are perfectly sunk as well. Just really nicely done, guys. And there's nothing about the fit, perfect centering. Look how tight that tolerance is there too, guys. If their blade is like ground badly or anything like that, you're gonna know it immediately. Speaking of, you look at the grind here. Everything's excellently terminated. The grind is very even. Very well done, guys. Very well done. Nothing I see here that would bother me at all. The factory grind was a little off. I did get this knife from Elliot at Sharp Thinking, and the factory grind, or I think he did sharpen it a little bit, maybe just on the sharp maker, but obviously it didn't do this. It didn't broaden at the tip. He kept the original factory edge angle on it and everything. I laid it back when I got it, but yeah, really impressed by this thing out of box, because it really wasn't out of box for me. Yeah, so really impressed by the fit and finish, and really enjoyed that as far as this goes. I'll talk about, taking it apart and putting it back together in a second. The action, guys, oh my gosh. This thing is spectacular. I mean, there is not much to complain about there, except maybe the fact that you could guillotine your finger very easily if you're not used to this thing, especially if you sharpen that. When this thing is screaming sharp, that's like, just be ready. Your fingernail might take a beating from it at first until you get better at it, but just beautifully free dropping. Just a pleasure. I mean, and God, that deployment, guys. Look at the recoil you get. It's like almost, it feels like an automatic in the way it deploys. Just amazing. Detent's dialed so perfectly. You can see it here. Nice, and sucks it in. Really great detent. And you can spidey flick it in either way. You can either get your nail behind it like that, or you can just push it, which really just shows the detent's dialed, because you can just push it past the detent, and that action being so smooth and detent being locked in or dialed in really just lets that thing fly. I love that. Love that action, guys. One of my favorites. There is you'll see right here, this is where the detent, okay, that's where the detent is sitting up against the tang right there. But if you watch, I can just push it past it. There is a ramp, a nicely done ramp. Just gets right onto the blade there. So that's where the blade is on it. So it is kind of far down, but it's not like this is a knife where you have a flipper tab to drop it down to anyways. So it's not something I really would worry about. A lot of times if you're worried about chopping your finger like that, you can just lean it over like that and just let it drop. You get used to like where it needs to go, which is right about there, and then it drops free. It's one thing that you could complain about, but I really don't mind that it's that far, especially with having a detent ramp where that just slides right over it. You can almost, like, watch, even if I just do that, I can just give it a nudge and it goes down. So even if you do get locked up on it, just takes a little shake and it'll drop past it. So really nice touch. Really enjoyed that. As far as use, guys, as far as the performance of this knife, that's where I really just started to fall in love with this knife. It was in use. Once I laid the edge back, because I first got, Elliot sent me his, and I wasn't necessarily blown away by the action on his, because he like tightens his pivot to where it doesn't free drop and stuff like that. Still had great action, and the deployment was still amazing, but that free dropping action wasn't there. But once I got this one, or actually I got another one that I ended up selling to my buddy, you guys all know Justin at Blue Collar Survival. So yeah, I sold that one to him because I kind of wanted the Stonewash blade. I originally got I got a good deal on a used one that had the coated blade. Then I ended up getting this one off of Elliott. So this is my second one, and they both were amazing knives. The one that I got had just as good of action as this, and it was about the same birth date. I think it was about 3 or 4 months younger. But yeah, this one I love the Stonewash blade, so I wanted to get one of these. Although I really like the two-tone blade too, that has it has like the satin here, or the DLC coating, and then where they grind is satin. It's really cool looking too. I love that look as well. I actually kind of miss it a little bit, but I do love this blade, so I'm not disappointed. But I laid the edge back on that one. That one had a bit thicker behind the edge dimension, right here at least. And when I laid this one back, you can see I've got a nice, pretty relatively thin 15-degree bevel there. And then, although it does thicken by the tip. And as far as the way it's sliced, guys, because it's a pretty broad blade with that 15-degree bevel, it just slices amazingly, guys. And when you're cutting through like thick, like let's say you put 5 or 6, 6 thick cardboard and try and cut through it all, this blade just has no issues. I love that it's long. It reminds me of the military and the way that you can just go to work. Like, you don't have to think about like, ooh, I got this much blade and then I got a choil that I got to worry about getting in the choil. Like, I don't have to worry about anything here, guys. I got plenty of blade. I can pull through stuff. I can push through stuff. Really just has an amazing cutting ability on this knife. And I really fell in love with this blade. I'll go ahead and put on the footage of me cutting with it right here. Yeah, I mean, just really blown away by the way this knife cuts. I love the blade shape. Really works well. And if you needed to pry, like I said, it's got plenty of material out on the tip. Just an excellent knife as far as that's concerned. I really did enjoy it. And the M390, yeah, guys, we've heard a lot about M390 and where it really should be as far as HRC numbers, and where companies are putting it seems very low. And we are wanting more out of M390. In this case, guys, on this knife, I sort of understand where they're coming from. They are targeting mostly like military men and guys like that usually are sharpening their knives in the field on simple stones, and they are also doing things with their knives that a lot of us wouldn't do. So in that case, they kind of target their HRC very low on these. From what I've heard, it's like 57 to 59. I've heard from a few different people that that's their target, that they got in contact with Microtech, and Microtech told them their target was like 58 to 59 or 58 to 60, something like that. And the one knife I believe that was tested, I don't quote me on it, but I believe it was tested at the high 57s, which would line up with what I've heard about them. And it is disappointing, guys, to hear that, but at the same time, this knife performed to my liking. I'm not super, disappointed with the M390 on this. It is extremely easy to sharpen. As far as the time taken on the stones, guys, I'm not talking about hard to sharpen as far as like the ability is. It takes more skill. All I'm saying is it takes longer on the stones. So, which means that it has higher wear resistance, which means that it's going to take longer to dull. For the most part, guys, that's what that means. It doesn't always equate to that. Sometimes there's, obviously if the grain structures are fine, if there's not a lot of retained austenite and things like that. the knife will be easier to sharpen. So that's not always the case, guys. That's why you hear me say HRC is not everything, because sometimes a higher HRC can still be harder. I mean, a lower HRC can still be harder to sharpen because the retained austenite, and also because of, like, let's say the way that they set up their elements, you know, by austenitizing and the tempering process at the end and all that. So there's different ways to set up your steel with different carbides in, you know, being utilized and stuff like that. So that all comes into play when we're talking about the way that your steel is going to perform. In this case, I felt that they did a really good job with the grain refinement on this knife. It feels good. It sharpens. It sharpened really well. It took a smoking edge, and it actually held it very well. So yeah, it's definitely a great knife as far as use goes, and I'll talk more about the ergonomics and all that when I bring you guys back. I'm very happy with the ergonomics of this knife. It works extremely well, and as a functional user, beater, all those things above, EDC knife, this is an amazing option, and I would suggest it to most people as long as this fits within the you know, your size, legal size limits and stuff like that where you live, and people are okay with seeing you pull out a knife like this, and I'll talk more about that in a second. So bringing you guys back from that, yeah, really was excited and loved using this knife. Like I said, you can see the way I handled this knife in the cut tests and stuff like that. You can get all the way up on it like this and just choke up on it like that, and you are very close to the cutting edge. And you put your finger on the back here, and it's very comfortable. Although it does get a little thin right there, it is chamfered very well, and I enjoyed using that like that. I also would come back like this, and for more of a push cutting type of thing. And when I say push cut, I'm not talking about push cut like this. I'm talking about, like, you know, when I'm just angling down and pushing through a material like that, or stabbing into something, a box or whatever. When I move up here, that's a little tight, but I would just move my thumb up to this side of the ramp, and it's actually extremely comfortable like that. I enjoy it. You could put your finger here, but for fine tasks, but I don't see you using it like that. And there's plenty of room there if you do want to put your finger there. In this type of situation, not like this necessarily. That's a little too close for comfort in my opinion. But like this, you could pinch up on it like that. Yeah, and as far as the thumb studs, guys, I didn't talk, or stop pins, I should say. These are press fit, and they do both. They make contact very well. I didn't talk about this, but this thing is so rock solid. I mean, no movement in any direction, and that lockup at about, you know, 50% maybe, it's just rock solid, guys. Ain't going anywhere. And on top of that, the way that these stop pins work is going to give you more lateral support, and that's excellent, guys. Really nice. This did have a little bit of lock rock when I first got it, but as it's worn in, this is what I talk about, letting knives, you know, letting it all wear in, and letting it, giving it some time with your knife at first, because there are things that you're going to notice, like lock stick and stuff, that will eventually work themselves in. So this was no exception, and you might be able to hear just a little bit, but as soon as that thing starts to fit, yeah, there is no movement, guys. This thing is solid. Excellent. And the external stop pins kind of help with that. So really nice touch, and you can see that it is hitting pretty evenly there. See those two marks there? Hitting very evenly. You see a little wear right there, but I think that might be from me hitting something, not necessarily from the stop pins hitting. Just beautifully done in that sense. And the ergonomics are excellent, guys. Everything's chamfered very nicely, and I don't feel anything, guys, as far as, like, you know, hot spots, hard spots. So comfortable, guys. The way that this tapers down like this, I liked it a lot better than the wedge effect of the Strider, guys. And I actually go Microtech over Strider personally, and it's just the ergonomics. My hands fit this much better. I like the tapering better than this wedge out. It doesn't push me forward. My hand just wants to be wherever I put it. And it's so nice in that way. It doesn't want to push your hand into any certain grip. My hands, again, are 3.5 across, 4 inches tall, 6.25, 6.5 to 6.5 from here to here. And it fits just amazingly, guys. I love this. And as far as the pocket clip being tipped down only, ergonomically, this clip is excellent. I don't even feel it in use. And it's something like this and this that actually made me not give a shit about tip down orientation, because the clip is done well. When a clip is done well and meant to be that way, I don't feel the clip. This is done amazingly. And the clip just helps fill the hand right here. And it's nice and broad and flat. I don't feel that clip at all in use. Maybe just slightly right here, but when you're really using it, I didn't notice it. So, amazingly done. And as far as guys talking about, the deployment with these, I've talked about this before in many different videos, but when you're pulling one of these knives out of your pocket with such a large handle knife, as you pull it out, all you have to do is rotate here, and you're there. With a knife this large, if the clip's down here and you're pulling it out, now you have to scoot up the knife to deploy it. And it's more movement, whereas this is just easy. I actually prefer bigger knives having the tip down, to be honest. This is, I would say that the hinderer, because I tried this with the clip up here, and this is like the cutoff for me. This is the size knife where the cutoff for tip down goes. Anything bigger than this, I kind of like having it tip down, to be honest. Personally, that's where I land. So, but in saying that, I really enjoyed the tip down carry on this knife. Both of these knives, I prefer them to be tip down. I like it better like that. And yeah, and it's for a good reason. And as far as carry with this knife, just excellent for how big it is. It is a little big up at the top where you're trying to get your hand in, but once you get it in your pocket, there's a ton of room down here because of how it tapers. I had no issues carrying it. And I will bring in, sorry, I didn't talk about the behind the edge thickness. I'm going to bring in my 2 measuring devices, and we're going to talk about this real quick before I wrap it up. This is going to be a long one. All zeroed out. Yeah, 5.12, guys. That's excellent weight on this knife. For the amount of work you're going to get done and how thick that stock is, excellent, guys. Really impressed by this knife. And as far as the way it's made, it's just made amazingly. And just so rock solid at that weight. And I wouldn't be upset about carrying 5 ounces. And in this configuration with this knife, I didn't notice the 5 ounces like I do in other knives that feel denser. This knife just feels like it just conforms to wherever you're carrying it. As far as the behind the edge thickness, sorry I didn't do this sooner. Probably should have done it in performance. Guys, that is not fooling you. 14 thousandths right there. It's at the thinnest part of the blade. But yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then once we get out here, it's definitely gonna thickens up a little bit. But still at 20 thousandths with that thick stock. This is at 15 degrees, guys, so that's about where we want to be. 19 thousandths. It's about where we want to be for, performance-wise. You don't want to go much smaller than that. 40 thousandths at the tip. Like I said, it gets really broad at the tip. 45 thousandths at the very tip. And that's because of how they do that, you know, just to keep some thickness at the tip. But yeah, it's really impressive cutting with this. Just a great cutting tool, really, to be honest. And I'm really I kind of fell in love with this knife, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I really love it. I'm always going to have one of these probably after this. For me, it's like this and this knife are the ideal like large knives for just like work knives. I want to get shit done, and these both nail that for me, to be honest. And both of them have an incredible action as well, but this one just a little bit more on that premium side. Real quick, I'm just gonna put a picture of this knife pulled apart before I wrap it up, and I'll show you that this knife was amazingly built, guys. The pockets, the way that this thing is put together, it's so awesome, man. And they really put a lot of time and effort into just into developing this knife into something that's just a beast, and I really enjoy that about it. And I'll bring you back, and even the glass breaker, guys, I'm not much of a glass breaker guy, but look at that, how well that's done. It's just on the tip there. It's not going to poke you, it's not going to get in the way. But if you did need to break glass and you didn't want to mess up your tip, if you were in a survival situation, look at that, guys. You want to talk about comfort level in breaking glass. I mean, I could grab this thing and just, whatever you had to do, that's going to be easy to break. So, excellently done. This way, I think, is even more comfortable. And then you could just flip this thing around and go to town if you had to, which most of us, this is just going to be in our pocket at work and cutting some bags open, some boxes down. But yeah. Really impressed with this knife, and I would say that I would recommend it to anybody, guys. Anyone that's looking for a good, hard use work knife, something that's going to take some abuse, and you could get it dirty. Like I said, those pockets, these bearings are pocketed, and they're ceramic, so it's self-lubricating against M390, which is going to be nice and smooth and the M390 is not at a super high HRC. Would I like to see some like crew wear or something at a high HRC, something that's tougher that people can sharpen in the field? Yes. They do the M390 to be easier to sharpen in the field, but guys, use a different steel if that's the case. In my opinion, I think, why would you use M390? M390 is only going to be at its optimal range when it's up at that 62, so why use a steel that's not optimized for what you're looking for? If they used Z-wear or crew wear, something that's meant to be like have good edge retention with good toughness and easy sharpening, like go for something like that, guys. Get away from the M390. I know that the community called for M390, that was the big, like, everyone wants M390 on everything, but we're finding out that that's not what we really want, guys. I hope everyone is starting to realize that. But, in a lot of things it is what we want, but not necessarily in something like this. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this came across right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope I did a good job. I hope it's not too long, and I really hope I did this thing justice, because it is an excellent knife, and I really do love it. And it's become something that, oh God, guys, look at that pivot too. Such a beefy pivot. It's just a beefy knife altogether. I love it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.